Well, it's an honor for me to be asked again to stand before a class and tell you about the experiences I've had during World War II. I was just in my beginning of my teen years, 12, 13, and my mother came to school, we were in school, and took us out of school, my sister and I, and said, "We're at war and you're coming home." Freedom isn't free. I want you to remember that. There are many people that have laid down their lives to keep freedom. And our country is one of them, America. And you got to remember that too. I was born in a free country called the Netherlands, the Nederlands, which means the lowlands, because the land is actually 6 feet below sea level. They've had to fight always against the invaders, which was Spain, France, and above all the North Sea. The water wants to claim the land, and since the land is 6 feet below the sea level, it has been and still is a fight. I am an American by choice. But on May 10, 1940, we were invaded by our neighbor, Germany. A few days before, across the street from my home, paratroopers landed on the school. They had Dutch uniforms on, but they spoke in German. The police took them prisoners while they yelled, "Just wait, we'll be back to get you." And they did. Even though they fought hard, after 5 days they had to capitulate, and we belonged to the German Reich. Life changed in a hurry. Food became scarce, the stores were empty, no milk, no eggs, no bread, etc. Young men were picked up from the streets and shipped to Germany to work. My father also, this is a picture of him, but he escaped after 2 weeks and returned home. He joined the resistance and was not home much. But we had people coming and going in our home all the time. They were trying to escape the Nazis. In February 1941, all the city of Amsterdam, where I lived, went on strike, and there was a war between the citizens and the Nazi party. Lots of people were killed. My dad was in the middle of it and broke his arm on the head of a Nazi. He went to the hospital, and the doctor put a cast on his arm. And he went right back, and we're fighting again with the Germans. And now we used this cast to beat him over the head as a weapon, which promptly broke, of course, and had a new one put on, and said the doctor, "Why don't you use a 2x4? Of course they couldn't win. You can't win against guns. Soon they started rounding up the Jewish population. Amsterdam is known for a lot of Jewish people that live there. First, all the Jews had to mark their clothing with a star.
It's right here.
And I have it here.
It's right here.
Oh, with the star that says Jew. On everything, on their underclothing, on their coats, on their shirts, so that everybody would know that they were Jewish. They were forbidden to go into public places. And then they started rounding them up and sending them to the concentration camps. Anna Frank, and I'm sure you know that story, lived just a couple of blocks away from my home. Of course, I didn't know she was there. Nobody knew she was there until somebody told. Many of the Dutch citizens would try to hide these people so that they wouldn't have to be sent to the concentration camps in Germany. My dad was always looking for people who would do that. He really was a hero. We ended up with a 21-year-old girl who was very difficult and had many demands, and a 6-month-old baby named Ellie. She was the only child of a couple, but the couple who were hiding them did not want the child. You know why? Because children cry. You can't keep them quiet. You can't hide them. This is Ellie's jacket that her mother made for her. And this is her little rattle. And those are the only two things that are left of our Ellie. One day, my mother sent me across the street to the neighborhood market. We lived on the 3rd floor of a tenement house, and I ran down across the street with my mother watching. As I was running, a German motorbike with a sidecar and 3 soldiers in it came down the street, pulled a hand grenade, and threw it at me to kill. The street blew up, and my mother watched in horror, thinking her daughter had been killed. But there was not a scratch on me as I continued to run into the store, and the people were just looking me over to make sure I was okay. They just couldn't believe that I lived through that. I really didn't know what had happened, except that the street blew up. It was indeed a miracle. My dad is my hero. He put his life in jeopardy for others. I wanted to help him and did some underground work. One night, we had a curfew at night after 7 o'clock. No one was allowed out. We had some pamphlets that told the citizens of Amsterdam what was going on, and he let me distribute them. It had some glue on the top, and I would lick it like that and then put it on the wall or on a lantern so that the people could read them. As I was doing this, a German soldier saw me, pointed his rifle at me, and told me to halt, which means stop. I knew that it would not be a good thing for me to get caught, and I ran with him in pursuit. I could run very fast and did so until I saw an open door where I went in and hid and heard him running past me. I stayed there for a long time. On a cold evening in 1942, I had played house with my mother. I was the maid and did some housework. Well, I had an apron, which actually was a pillowcase, tied around my waist as an apron, with the opening on the side. When we heard heavy footsteps on the stairs, and we all sat scared and listening, hoping that they wouldn't come up to the 3rd floor. They stopped on the 2nd floor, but soon they came up our flight of stairs and bursted in our home. 6 big men with guns drawn, yelling and screaming. I have never seen my dad so calm. Marie, the Jewish girl, tried to escape, but they grabbed her and then concentrated on little Ellie, who was in her crib crying. "Who is this child?" And Dad saying, "It's my sisters. They don't have much food, so we're taking care of her." Now the interesting part is that while they were interrogating him, he handed me and I was sitting right next to him on the piano bench. His wallet, his papers, his ring, and I stuck it in the opening of the pillowcase. They never noticed. Never noticed. Then they took him, and I even know the man that took him. His name was Sam Ollie. But they left Ellie and told Mom that they would be back in the morning and not to try to escape. At that point, they really didn't know what to do because they had Marie, and they just couldn't handle a baby at that time. So Mom packed the suitcase, and we were going to escape anyway. But the soldiers were everywhere. They were on the roof, in the hall, down the stairs, everywhere. We couldn't get out. The next day, 3 men came, and they had Mom take Ellie to the Jewish orphanage and told her that she could visit her once a week. They were just trying to keep Mom quiet, because you can understand that she was very, very upset, because the stories had already filtered into the country that when they picked up the Jewish people, they gassed them and killed them. The orphanage was full of children and doctors and nurses, and Mom thought that maybe it would be okay. They wouldn't kill children for sure. But on her 6th visit, the building was empty, and they all ended up in Auschwitz and the gas chambers. My dad was sent to a concentration camp in the south of the Netherlands and saw and experienced many atrocious things. He was taken into the woods many times, and they put a gun to the back of his head and told him to run. If he had, they would have shot him and said that he was escaping. This would give the soldier a 3-day pass and 20 guilders, which is dollars. He never did run, but turned around and pointed at his forehead and said, "If you're going to kill me here and not in the back." He was a feisty man and not easily intimidated. I think that actually saved his life. They admired his guts. He was a capo, which is kind of a leader of a group of prisoners, in charge of the prisoners. They had to dig trenches that were used as latrines, and as it rains a lot in Holland, the trenches were always full with water, etc. One day, a little squirrel fell in and could not get out. A German officer yelled, "Help him, somebody! Help him!" Is that ironic? People dying, people being killed, shot, executed, but save a squirrel. My dad jumped in the trench and fished the squirrel out. The officer was so happy and said, "What can I do for you?" And the answer was, "Send me home. My wife and my 2 daughters need me." "Oh no," he answered. "I cannot do that. You are a political prisoner." Well, this went on for a while. Him asking what he could do, and Dad saying, "Send me home." And another miracle. The officer called him in the office, gave him a release paper, and he was free. And you know what he did? He rejoined the resistance. Now, I have skimmed over a lot of time, but I feel it's important for our children to know what it is like to be occupied by a dictator. I am now one of the last ones that can testify these things really happened. After my generation is gone, it will be forgotten.